Shame has to leave before the King, before the King. Chains have to break, dry bones awake, prepare the way. Oh, fear has to flee, shame has to leave before the King, before the King. Chains have to break.
Praying, you've been working hard for good. Yes, you are. So fan the flame and keep it burning. We are refining in the furnace, and all the waiting will be worth it, because you're working for good. Miracles, miracle after miracle, open door after open door. Here it comes, so get ready for another one, 'cause another one is on the way. Miracle after miracle, open door after open door. Here it comes, so get ready for another one, 'cause another one is on the way. Oh, another one is on the way. Yes. Rushing wind, so rushing wind and living water. You're the God of signs and God of wonders. So if you will it, what can stop it? Because you're working it all for good. Yeah, you're working it all for good. Yeah. Miracle after miracle, Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. Never stop, you never stop working. Never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Oh, even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. Never stop, oh, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. Never stop working. Never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. Never stop working. Never stop. Jesus, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Yes, you are, Jesus. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Oh, that is who you are. Yes, that is who you are. 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 Oh, we sing that is who you are. Oh, that is who you are. That is who
Yes, Jesus, we just thank you for the fact that that is indeed who you are. You are a good father. You are a way maker. You are a miracle worker. You split the seas. You come into our space. You come into our darkness. You come into darkest spaces of our life, and you make a way for us. You shed light. You say there is hope. You are healer. There is no affliction that you are not going to heal, Father. Jesus, we just thank you for everyone in this room. We are so appreciative of the lives in this space that you are working and speaking into. And we just pray for open hearts. God, we just are so expectant for what you're going to do this morning. So, Father, thank you for bringing us here. Thank you for making a way for us to get here, to worship, to come together in community, and to walk out into the world and spread a little more love to it, right? All right, we love you, Lord. In your precious name, I pray. Amen. Hello, everybody. How's it going? Why don't you say hi to somebody? I don't know, give him a fist bump. There he is.
Good morning, Shoreline Church. Thank you guys for being here this morning. You guys look amazing, by the way. I see some of you guys have been out getting some sun the last couple of weeks. Tans are coming in, feeling good. Guys, if you don't know me, my name is Matt Metcalf. I'm the community pastor here. And at Shoreline Church, the heartbeat of ministry is to bring Jesus and his church to the front and center of people's everyday lives. And life happens not just in here, but out in our community. And that's where our Church for Crab Island team comes in. This team was launched in the summer of 2020 as part of our response to COVID. Now, we did this with the goal of taking our irrational generosity outside of the four walls and out into our community. And Church for Crab Island has grown each year because of you guys and what you've been doing through that irrational generosity. And speaking of that, while the host team comes forward and gets ready to take this morning's tithes and offerings, I want to remind you of something very important. If you're an adult in here and you're in significant need of food, shelter, or clothing, we invite you to reach into the bucket as it passes right in front of you and take out any loose cash that you find, because we believe it's God's anyway, and we are just a conduit for him to get those resources out, not only here, but also into our community. So if you would rather give online this morning, we have some ways that you can give digitally on the screen behind me. And so host team, as you get ready to pass those buckets, Go ahead and start that now. And as the buckets are being passed, I want to invite you to please check out the video that's going to play on the wall behind me, where I talk a little bit more about Church for Crab Island, Grub Club, and a very special opportunity we have this coming summer.
Hey guys, my name is Matt Metcalf, and I'm the community pastor here at Shoreline Church. And you've probably heard us say this before at Shoreline, but part of our mission is to revive hearts, restore hope, and revitalize culture. And one of the ways that we do that is through Church for Crab Island, also through Grub Club, and this year we have an extra special thing that God's put in our laps. We are going to get an opportunity to reach out to the J1 community. And if you haven't heard of them, what it is a bunch of international students that come into our area and they work a summer job. The real hope that we have in this is that we're going to start doing a dinner for them. And what we learned through Grove Club is that sharing a meal with somebody is such a great way to open someone's heart, to have an opportunity to have a conversation that you wouldn't have otherwise, but it also builds relationship.
Thursdays is our busiest day of the week. We start super early in the morning, and our most exciting part of the day is when we see the happy little faces bringing us the boxes of lunch.
Fills my belly, it gives me the energy I need for the day, but it also makes me feel like seen and appreciated from our fellow members in the community.
Encourages us to be out here in the sun, let tourists have a great time out here.
We're so grateful for everything that you do. You know, always brighten our days. You can come by, especially with the liquid IVs.
As we build these relationships, as we do what we saw Jesus do in John chapter 4 with the woman at the well, is we get an opportunity to restore that hope. He restored her hope. He gave her some dignity. He formed community with her and a relationship that then went on to change the hearts of an entire town. Well, we have an entire community out here at Crab Island and down on our harbor. And this is a way that we can give back with no strings attached and do what we saw Jesus do. And if we can do what we saw Jesus do, that's just all kinds of good.
Guys, I'm really excited about this summer. Church for Crab Island, Grub Club, and our J1 students. And like Jessica was talking about last week, this is our initiatives months, and we're asking you to be a part of that and a part of what we're doing through sponsorship, serving, and or giving towards these initiatives. Church for Crab Island involves Grub Club's weekly lunch that we provide, lunch outreach, also a daily touch point where we go out onto Crab Island, we go out to the harbor, and it's just, we talk with the people that we know out there, check on them, see how they're doing, love on them, give them a little hope and excitement throughout the day. And we're also inviting the Church for Crab Island community come and join with J1 students to have a dinner once a week. Our hope is that this local impact will spread around the world, and the shared mission will lead to a lasting good in the hearts and the lives of those that both participate in serving and those that are being served. So with those things in mind, please welcome Pastor Eric to the stage this week, and I'll be back at the end to tell you a little bit more about how you can get involved.
How you can participate. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. My name is Eric. I'm the pastor here. You know, sometimes I go to church conferences and I'll be talking to other pastors. I'm like, what do you mean your church doesn't own a pontoon boat? You know, they're like, we have a 15-passenger van. I'm like, what would you use that for? Isn't it awesome to be able to do outreach in the community where we live and it looks the way, because you could be doing outreach in Kansas. So we're blessed, right? Suffering for Jesus, right? Speaking of suffering for Jesus, a couple months ago, we were on vacation in Bahamas. We went with another couple here. And while we were there, we decided that we were going to hire a charter captain. Actually, this is a captain that we have used for years. And we get a great deal. His name's Shoreline. I got a couple friends here that they know him. And Shervin is like the 18-time national conch opening champion. He also he pastors a church. He sings while he drives the boat. He sings hymns. He is just an all-around Bahamian waterman. And so we rent him for the day. And because it's kind of remote, it's a very good deal. Because if you ever chartered a boat, it can be expensive. But because he's remote, I think we started getting him for $400 for a day. I think this year was $500 for a day. And so by the time that you split that with 6 people, it decreased our expenses. And if I had shared in those expenses, it would have been even better. Because my friends are going, Eric, you didn't contribute. I know, I brought my presents. But what I'm trying to say is it was an incredible trip. I mean, got to go fishing, find lobsters, just go exploring the beaches. It's just so beautiful there. And the best part was sharing the costs. Because we shared the costs, we were able to maximize our experience. We were able to do more because we did it together. And I'm sure that you've done stuff like that. Maybe you've rented a house, with your family or friends like they do on 30A, and it sleeps 30 people or whatever. And you're able to get a way bigger house than you could afford. I know that we wouldn't have been able to afford to hire Shervin for a couple days, but because we were able to pool our expenses, we were able to do that. Or maybe it's a normal occurrence for you because you have 4 kids and you have to carpool with other parents because just juggling drop off and pick up for 4 kids isn't possible, by yourself. So you pool your resources. Or maybe you're in a season where you're a young adult, and you're having to share your resources, share the rent, share the Netflix password, all of those things. In other words, just stretch what you've got. Or maybe you're in a place where you're not in that place anymore. You're in a place where you can help other people do that. You're making it possible for someone else. Whatever it is, we all know that when we come together, we can do more together than we can alone. And it's not just with vacation, it's not just with saving money or sharing expenses, but it is actually a kingdom principle that we're going to look at today. So, last week, Jessica and Pastor Matt said that we are stepping into our summer initiative season. And initiatives, this is where what we're doing is we're focusing on our local initiatives. We talk about initiatives twice a year. Once a year, it's a global initiatives and what we're doing nationally. And then once a year, usually right before summer, we focus on our local initiative. And our goal with these initiatives is just like with the charter, in the same way, that we would be able to leverage our resources together so that we can combine them and make the most local impact possible. In other words, we would like to, kind of a big idea today of what we're going to talk about, is we would like to turn our collective generosity into unstoppable kingdom impact. In other words, because we can take our generosity that we have individually and combine it together, we can make a huge impact. And let me just make this clear. You guys, as a church, are already making an impact. You are already making one locally. Every time I go somewhere and I tell them if I'm at lunch and they say, oh, where are you pastor? I say Shoreline Church. And they're like, oh my, and they always have something to say about how generous you are. But not only are we doing that locally, we're doing it nationally and globally as well. And so all I want to do with this talk is I just want to make sure we're keeping our foot on the gas when it comes to making an impact. And to do that, it's going to take all of us maximizing our personal generosity so that we can accomplish these initiatives. Now, let me just make this clear before we go on further. And even those who are watching online, Pastor AG, we're glad that you're here tuning in. But let me tell you what this is not about. This is not about your church needing your money. That's not what this talk is about. This talk is about this world needing your influence. This talk is about your culture, your community needing your influence. And listen, maybe I'm a little biased, but I think our nation needs more churches like Shoreline. I do. I think our world needs more churches like Shoreline. Because what you're doing is making an impact. It's not only making an impact global in our community, but I hear about it in other parts of the world. Now, again, let me just say this. If talking about money makes you nervous, I get it. But let me tell you why you don't need to be freaked out when a preacher like me steps up here and talks about generosity. Because I have never met anybody that has taken what Jesus taught about money and has embraced it and lived their life that way. And I've never met anybody that has done that wants to go back to the way they used to live. And I'm one of them. I know. Darlene and I are so grateful that when we became Christ followers, that we were part of a church that taught about tithing. We were part of a church that talked about giving your first and your best. We were part of a church that talked about giving above and beyond. We were part of a church that talked about investing in what God is doing in the community. And I so want that for you if you've never experienced that, for whatever reason that is. Maybe fear or debt, can't afford it, or hesitation, or even the fact that you don't trust religion or church. I still want to be able to get you to see kind of the way God sees and hopefully impact that. I want to engage you. So today's goal is about seeing everything differently, especially when it comes to giving. Because I'm telling you, again, I have never met a follower of Jesus that allowed their money and their stuff to follow him and regretted it. In fact, you could say this is another form of following Jesus by allowing your money to follow Jesus. Now, this idea of your money following Jesus goes back to one foundational truth, and I'm going to share this with you in just a moment. And for some of you, it's just kind of a reminder. Some of you, maybe you know this. It's foundational for you. You've been living this. But we always need a reminder of the foundations, of the fundamentals. Maybe for some of you, you kind of live this way, and then for whatever reason, maybe it was COVID or the economy, you kind of moved away from this, and it's a reminder. But for some of you, this may be the first time you've heard this truth that I want to share with you. And just to, let me get it straight, so you know that perfectly clear my motive. We're not taking another offering. We've already received the offering. So that's not what this is about. This is about what I want to do is take us on a journey that will challenge you to have really a thought exercise, to begin to change the way you think. Because really, this one truth that we're going to look at today has the power to change how you see everything, not just your money, not just your stuff or your finances. Now, we're going to look at this truth first the way King David, who was a king of Israel, said it. But then later on, King Jesus, he reiterated it too. Now, David expressed this truth that I want to look at, jump off of here, in a prayer that he prays, okay? And this is toward the end of his reign as king, and he just drops this little, 10-word little prayer. In this middle of this prayer, he drops this sentence that I want to focus on, found in 1 Chronicles. And he says to God that everything in heaven and earth is yours. So in the middle of this prayer, he has this statement that I just want to kind of take out and focus on, where he says, God, you own it all. God, I recognize that everything in heaven and earth is yours. We are just stewards. We are just managers of what you've given us. Now, at this point, David is probably in his early to late 50s. He is the king of Israel, but he's pretty much, there's peace on all sides. He's conquered the boundary towns and the regions, and there's just pretty much peace. So he's kind of, I don't want to say he's taking it easy, but he definitely doesn't have the challenges that he did as a young king. But he has a dream. And his dream is that he will build a building for the presence of God, a temple for the presence of God to live in. Because all the other cultures, they all had buildings for their gods. Jesus, the Jews, the Israelites, their temple, their God lived in a tent, or what they called a tabernacle. So David says, I've got peace, we've got prosperity, so you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a temple that's worthy of this God we serve. Well, this prophet comes along, gets sent there by God, who has a message from God. His name is Nathan. And he shows up and he says, hey, David, God's heard your prayers, but here's his response. Thanks, but no thanks. You're a man of war. You have blood on your hands. You can't build this building for this great God, so that's not going to be part of your plan. But, he says, your son can build it. So David accepts this humbly, and instead of just walking away and go, well, that's Solomon's responsibility, he decides that he's going to pool his resources. He's going to pool his wealth. He's going to prepare the materials and get them ready so that when Solomon is ready to build this temple for their God, he has everything that he needs. And so David personally, from his own wealth, his own bank accounts, generously provides all of these supplies and resources and funding to be able to build this building. But then he invites all the leaders, the city councilmen. We got any city councilmen in here? The city councilmen, the influencers, everybody who has extra to join this endeavor. And when he does, the text tells us that these people gave willingly. They saw this as an opportunity for something big, to be a part of something big, and so they decided to give as well. They followed David's lead and they give. And when the leaders of this country do this, the text tells us next that the people, even those who had very little, even those who had very little extra, that they wanted to join in. It says that the people rejoiced at the willing response of their leaders, for they had given freely and wholeheartedly to the Lord. And David, the king, also rejoiced greatly. So you got to get the sense of, there's this sense of excitement and anticipation because their God has been living in a tent. And now they are going to build him a building that's worthy of his honor. And David, they begin to take an offering and people begin to give, and it's incredible how much they give. It actually reminds me of back in Easter of 2016 when we announced over at Uptown Station and at the Rave Motion Pictures that we had signed a contract on this building. And when we announced it, there were people crying, there were people laughing. There was so much joy because for 12 years we'd been setting up and tearing down, and now we finally had a place that we could call our home. It was more than a year before we could ever even move in here, but that's where these guys are. There's just this excitement. And at that moment, when they are celebrating this before the people, David prays this prayer that this line is part of. And I hope that it can become a posture for us as a church. I hope that it's a posture that we can all adopt. And I hope that it allows us to see our stuff how God sees our stuff. Because I say this all the time. If we can see as God sees, we will be more inclined to understand why he says what he says, which will make us more inclined to do what he says. So here's what David prays. I'm going to read this prayer to you, and I'm going to occasionally insert some thoughts. All right? So here's his prayer. He says, yours, Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the majesty and the splendor. For everything in heaven and earth is yours. In other words, it all belongs to you, God. Everything that we see, all the power, the splendor, the glory, the majesty. And put that title slide back up there. You know, when you're out in the past and you're coming back from a sunset cruise and you see God's handiwork in the sky, David says, all that's you. Everything that we see, glory, splendor, power, all that is yours. All that majesty is yours. And then he says something that's really kind of surprising for a king to say, because kings are pretty much into themselves. I mean, they are. It's all about self-protecting, self-preservation, everything. So he says something that's different for a king. He says, yours, he says, yours, Lord, is the kingdom. And you are exalted as head over all. In other words, he says, God, this isn't even my kingdom. Yeah, I may be the king, but I'm smart enough to know that it's not my kingdom, that this kingdom belongs to you. Oh, I might wear the crown, but I'm not confused. I know who is the head of this nation is. I know who the head of this nation is. I know it's yours. It's your kingdom. It's not mine. And then, listen to this. This is so powerful. And if we could ever adopt this, if this was front and center of our way of thinking, it would completely change our lives. Verse 12, he says, wealth and honor come from you. You are the ruler of all things. David says, listen, I'm not confused. I know what I have because you gave it to me. I know that everything I have is because it's something that you have allowed me or you have given to me. And this is not only true of David, but it's true of me, and many of you know it's true of yourself. That anything that we have, the extra that we have, and when I say extra, because most of us don't live hand to mouth, but the extra that we have is because God has allowed us to manage that extra. That he has allowed us to manage whatever that is, whether it's position or influence or stuff or money. Because again, we don't live hand to mouth. We don't live where every meal comes that day. And ultimately, we understand that everything that we have comes from God, while not ignoring the fact that you worked really hard to get where you are. Not ignoring the fact that, yes, you took advantage of opportunities that came your way, deals that opened up, doors that you knocked on. It's not ignoring all of that. In fact, some of you have told your story. I've heard your story. You know, I was in college, and I got out of college, and I had this degree, and I was going in this direction. But then this opportunity that presented myself to me, you know, I just thought of someone, my friend, and I just thought of it because you guys are here. My friend David, he owns Bud and Alley, so I went to high school with him. And that was just an opportunity, even before Seaside was there. He got an opportunity to be have a business partnership in that restaurant, Bud and Allie's. And lo and behold, 5 years later, they build Seaside across from them. The guy's doing pretty well, right? Now, he can say that he worked hard and he took it, but I'll tell you what, God had put him in a position to take advantage of that opportunity. And so I'm not ignoring all of that. I'm not ignoring that because some of you have that story. I was doing this and this opportunity opened, changed my life forever. And if you were a Christian when that opportunity presented itself, your instinct might have been, God, thank you for giving me this opportunity. And so you leveraged it. You took advantage of that opportunity. You know, you took advantage, but we can't be confused and believe because we're confused if we think that ultimately we control every aspect of our future. We would be confused if we think that we control all of the variables. Yes, we take opportunities that come our way, but I think David understood something that his culture missed, and I think it's something that our culture misses as well. And that is that we are arrogant if we think that we control all of the variables. The arrogance thinks that we control everything even when it's out of control. Now, yes, again, even though we worked hard, we took advantage of opportunities that came our way, ultimately success and prosperity, it happened because of what we did, but we're smart enough to determine that, guess what? I don't determine all of the, we're smart enough to know that I don't determine all the variables. I don't determine what my genes are. I didn't determine where I was born. I didn't determine when in history where I was born or who I was born to. You didn't determine what it was inside you that gave you that hard work to ultimately work your way out of that environment that you were born into. There are so many variables to our life that it would be arrogant to think that we did it all ourselves. In fact, to put it bluntly, arrogance is a reflection of ignorance. Because arrogance says, I am too ignorant to understand that I don't control all the variables that have allowed me to be as successful as I am. Now, David, here he is, publicly in front of the whole nation, declaring, I'm not confused. I know why I'm here. I know why I am the king. I know why I have this position. I even know why I have extra that I can put aside so that we can build this temple for God. But then he says this. He says, in your hands are strength and power to exalt and give strength to all. David says, look, in your hands, you have strength and power. And you give it to who you want to give it to. And again, David is acknowledging publicly, I know why you chose me as king. I'm only king, because you chose me as king. I did not choose this myself. I didn't create this opportunity for myself. I didn't go knock off the king in front of me to get here because it's God who raises up who he raises up. Now, I like to think that maybe at this moment, when David is standing before all the city of Jerusalem and he's declaring this, that maybe he thinks back to how he actually became king. And some of you, if you grew up in church, you remember this story. This is before Goliath. You remember that there was a king, the first king, his name was Saul. And the prophet Samuel, who was kind of the mouth person for God, God tells him, look, I'm done with him. He's rebellious. I'm going to do something new. So he tells the prophet, he says, I want you to go to this man, Jesse. He's got 7 sons. I want you to go to his house. And I want you to get all of his sons together because I'm going to choose the next king of Israel out of his sons. So the prophet Samuel goes to Jesse's house and he says, hey, they're like, what are you doing here? Anybody watching House of David right now? Okay, so this is fresh in your mind. He says, what are you doing here? And he goes, well, look, I got some good news. The dynasty is over. There's a new dynasty God is raising up. And the good news is that you're going to be the father of the next king. So one of your sons is going to be the next king. So bring him out. Who's our contestants? Let's bring them on out. And they bring out these 6 guys and starts with the first. Is it 6 or 7? Dave's our theologist. Is it 7 including David, or is it 6? Never mind. It's 6 or 7 sons. David's the youngest one. He's the half-brother. And they pull him out, and the first one is Eliab, and the text tells us that he's head and shoulders above everybody else. He looks like the football star, and Samuel in his heart thinks, oh, this is obviously the guy. And God goes, no, that's not the one. He goes on to the next son, Abinadab, and he says, oh, okay, this is the guy. He goes, no, that's not the one. Goes to the third one, Shammah. He goes, no, that's not the one. All the way down the line. And Samuel's like, hey, Jesse, do you have all your sons here? Because God says it's not any of these guys. Oh, yeah. We have one more. He's out back. He's out in the lower 40, take care of sheep, because we thought, we didn't invite him because we figured he can't possibly be the one. I mean, he's the runt of the litter. He's taking care of sheep. There's no way he's king material. And Samuel says, I am not leaving till you bring him. So they hold off on the barbecue. They send somebody out there. David, Dad needs you. They get back there. David gets back there, and there's, the grill's going. The family's out. He's like, what's going on? And all he hears is, on your knees, boy. And he gets down on his knees, and God tells Samuel, that's the one. He lays down, he gets down on his knees before the prophet, and he's thinking, he doesn't know what's going on. He just got pulled in from the shepherd, from taking care of the sheep. And he closes his eyes, and suddenly there's oil dripping down his head. And he thinks, wait a minute, now that's what they do when they anoint a king. And I have to imagine that all of that is going through his mind. When he's there in front of his people going, I'm only here because you allowed me to be here. David was smart enough to not forget. He was smart enough to remember. He was smart enough to keep this front and center, that there are so many variables in life that it would be ludicrous for us to take complete credit for our success. Yes, David worked hard. Yes, David killed Goliath. But most of the reason why he was there was because God put him there. And our wealth, our margin, our extra that has allowed us to take advantages of opportunities that come our way, that wealth, that honor, those opportunities comes from God. And if we have any understanding of that, the correct posture is going to be like David, and that is humility. David's posture always was a posture of humility and of gratitude. And so that's one of the characteristics we're going to look at today of David, and that is this, that David demonstrated true humility before God. Here's something that we all would probably agree on. Whenever you see someone who is successful, but also humble, in other words, they give credit to their coach, their football team, to the people on their team, to their people that work with them, when they give credit to those around them, or they give credit to God, when we look at them and we see that, most of us are moved by that. Most of us are inspired or impressed by that. But we also know that even with all their success, they're not confused. And so here's kind of the big idea of this little segment right here, and I think you're going to want to tweet this, and that is that gratitude should always outweigh entitlement. Oh, that's good, Eric. Say it again. Gratitude should always outweigh entitlement. As soon as you think that you're entitled, you better check your heart. Because as soon as you think you're entitled, you have moved away from gratitude. And then he tips his hat to another posture that I want us to look at. And I believe that this is the posture that can change your life. I promise you that if you assume this posture, you will never go back. And if you don't assume this posture, I think that one day you would regret it, okay? Because then he says, in verse 14, he says, but who am I? Remember, he's thinking about how he became the king. He was just a shepherd. And now he's in his 50s living in a palace. And he says, who am I? I mean, all these opportunities, all this wealth. I mean, look at his life has changed. And he's like, who am I? Why me? And then he kind of expands it to the rest of the country. He says, but who am I and who are my people that we should be able to give as generously as this? So the first thing that we see about David, number one, was he expressed true humility before God. The second thing we see about David is he asked the right questions. And I believe this question right here, who am I? Who are we? Is the question that every honest, wealthy person, if they haven't asked it, should be asking. And that is God, why? Why me and not them? Because, we all live in a world where we see what's happening in the world globally and economically. If you've ever traveled, you've gone to Uganda, Indonesia on one of our trips, or, wherever you've gone, or you just even watching on the news, you see people out there who don't have what you have, but yet they have more joy. Yet they have more happiness. They may not have your wealth. They may not have your influence or your resource, but in many cases, they live hand to mouth. Like, in other words, they eat what they find that day. And they don't have that much, but at the same time, what happens when we see that is you can't help but ask this question, God, why me? How did I end up here? How am I here? Why me and not them? How is it that I was blessed to live in the United States of America where my family had extra? And I could have been born somewhere else that you love so much, but I don't have as much. Why did you do that? And again, this was a culture that, listen, this culture, they lived hand to mouth. That's why when Jesus prayed, give us this day our daily bread, that was a literal prayer for daily bread. Daily bread meant daily bread. Meaning, God, give us something to eat today. People didn't have extra. They didn't have refrigerators and cabinets unless you were really wealthy. I don't think even the wealthy had refrigerators, but they might have had extras in storage, right? You know, when the psalmist said to share your food with the poor, they weren't talking about, oh, just give your leftover Whataburger to that homeless guy. They're talking about God answered your prayer for daily bread, and you're about to eat it, and you see someone who doesn't have any, and you cut it in half and you share it with them. Because remember, things didn't keep. Food spoiled. I mean, most grain and wine was the only thing that really kept. That other than that, everything spoiled. You had to use it that day or it would spoil. So if there was a famine, or you didn't bring in the harvest, or you had no grain, whole villages could starve. And David and his leaders realized, God, who are we that you've actually given us extra? Who are we that you've allowed us to have more than we need? So David knew for him and for these leaders who could actually support this initiative, because many people could not, because they didn't have extra. David and these leaders are like, God, who are we? Who am I that you would randomly choose us? Now, I know that, you guys come on a Sunday. We got those people. We got people watching online, and some of you just come on Sunday, and that's fine. I love it. Some of you have kind of moved in a little bit further. You participate in a community. Maybe you go to a soap group, or you're part of a community or something. Some of you serve, and some of you, when you kind of get on the inside or a little more closer on the inside, you get a little bit of an idea. You get to see what the impact our church is doing in our community. I mean, I get to see it all the time. Or you get to see our impact that we're making globally. But as someone who is in charge of all this, I look at the impact that our church is making for the size of our church, and it blows me away. It's humbling. It's overwhelming. Because we should not be doing the things that we do for this size church. But it tells me about your heart. And it's easy to be humble, because this is what I know too, is all the things that we do, all the best ideas we have, they're not mine. There's always, people will talk to me, they go, Eric, your church is so creative. You did it. I'm like, I didn't do anything. All I did was believe in people and then release them to exercise the gifts and the talents that God has for them. And when you do that, people, when there's no restraints, they just go all crazy. And so everything that we have is because somebody else. It's not because of me. But every once in a while, someone will ask me, what's the vision? And that kind of frustrates me, because we talk about the vision all the time here. I'm talking about it today. And I'm like, the vision hasn't changed since year one. For the last 20 years, the vision has been about what Matt talked about, reaching people who are far from God, changing people's, you hear it all the time, changing people's perception of church or of God by changing their perception of church, making Jesus front and center relevance of people's everyday life. It's all that. But beyond that, if someone asks me, they want to ask me about the vision, they go, what does that look like? I go, I don't know. And you may think, that's not very visionary for a visionary. What's the next 5 years look like? You know what I say? I don't know. Because it all depends on our willingness to say yes to God collectively. What we want to do as a vision, what we want to do as a church, you can ask me what it looks like. I don't know, because it depends on all of us. And if all of us are willing to say yes, then the Apostle Paul explained what our vision will look like. He says it'll be exceedingly abundantly above what we could ever ask, dream, or imagine. But it's not based on me. It's based on all of us collectively saying yes to God. And it makes me ask this question, though, and it's the right question. Why, God? Why me? Why did you put me in this church? Why did you allow me? I'm not worthy of this. I don't deserve this. Why do you allow me to have this influence? Why do you allow us to have this opportunity? And the answer, you know what the answer is? Because everything belongs to God. Everything comes from God. And that is the posture. that I want as a church to hold. That everything comes from you, God. That's the posture I want at you as an individual to hold. And that is the posture that keeps our hands open for God to give to you, because that is the posture that keeps our hands open for God to give through you. Because at the end of the day, a man or woman can only give what has been given to them by God. And David continues and he says this: everything comes from you. We have given only what comes from your hand. Lord our God, all this abundance that we've provided for building you a temple for your holy name comes from your hand, and all of it belongs to you. In other words, he's saying, listen, we are not confused. We're not giving you anything. We are simply giving back to you because it ultimately came from you. And I'm telling you, when this gets from your head to your heart, and you go, "That, Eric, what does that mean?" You know, because it's in our head right now. We go, "Oh yeah, that's great. That's great. We need to live this way." But when we actually start living this way and it becomes a lifestyle, I'm telling you, it is a game changer. Not just in terms of your money and your possessions. It's a game changer in terms of your entire life. And I can attest to that because I've seen it play out in my life and I've seen it play out in other people's life. Now let me be clear. Let me back up again and say this again. We are not in a capital campaign. Okay, we're not trying to raise money. If those of you who were there back in that Easter and we raised the money for that was a capital campaign, okay? What I am talking about is positioning ourselves so that we can maximize ourselves to be conduits into which Jesus continues to do what he said. On this rock, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not overcome it. He promised he was going to do it. He has invited us to participate. He's invited us to take our resources and enlarge his kingdom, expand his influence. And listen, this is the way we've thought this way for the last 20 years. This is our 20th years in a church, and you've heard terms that you hear for the last 20 years. You heard Matt use them, terms like serving our community with no strings attached. That's been part of who we are. That's part of loving people unconditionally. We're going to go out and serve them. What do we want in return? Nothing. That's why you hear terms like irrational generosity that we use today. We came up with that back in COVID when everyone was shutting down and holding back and hunkering down. We said, no, we're going to give bigger and better than we were before. Why? That's irrational. That's the way God is. But to maximize our generosity, we cannot think like owners who own all this stuff and then I just donate to the church. Listen, if that's your mindset, that everything that you have, you own, and then when you see fit, you donate. I want to challenge you in the next couple of weeks, especially with this talk. I want to challenge you to that mindset. You're like, I don't want to be challenged. Well, then I wouldn't come next week. And I'm serious. If this challenges you, you don't need to listen to it because I want to challenge us to step up, all right? And if this is your mindset, I want to challenge you to think differently. Not like an owner who has some wealth and some assets, who occasionally, or maybe even systematically, donates to the church. What I want you to think about, I want you to embrace this Old Testament mentality that is again reiterated in the New Testament, that we are simply stewards of what God has already given us. And for whatever reason, he's allowed us to have extra so that we can advance and enlarge and influence our community for God. And that means we have to adopt the mindset of a manager. Now, if we do this, three things are going to happen. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to go with this. 3 promises, all right? 3 promises that what happens when we think like steward. And the first one is this. You will view everything you own as a potential tool to further the agenda of your king. If you will do this, you will take everything that you own and you will see it as a tool to help further the kingdom of God. Your kitchen table, your dining room table, your man cave, your guest room, your guest house, your vacation house, that extra car, whatever it is, you'll begin to see it. Wait a minute. This is how you'll see it. Wait a minute. It isn't about just money for church. This mindset is about everything I own is a potential tool to maximize God's influence in the world, to expand the influence of God in our community. And again, some of you have done this. You've experienced this. You've opened up your homes for soap groups. You've opened up your homes for community groups. Some of you have opened up your homes for middle schoolers and high schoolers. Some of you are like super Christians like the Fostics. Are they here? Are you up there? Yeah. They opened their home. They have 23 middle school boys who meet on a weekly basis before school at your house. Is that right? 23 boys meet, middle school boys, meet in their home before school. It permanently smells like Axe spray in their house. All right? And you think you're a Christian? You haven't gotten to that level yet, right? See, this is the point. The point is it's not just about, and we talk about this all the time, about percentage giving, you know, all that. It's not about that. It's not about cash. It's about expanding the kingdom of God, and it is a game changer. Number 2, here's the second one. You will give, if you adopt this mindset, this is what will happen. You will begin to give first and adjust your lifestyle accordingly. You'll begin to give first and then adjust your lifestyle. And I teach on this all the time. We come back to this all the time. But some of you already know what I'm about to say. Give, save, live off the rest. Give first, save second, live off the rest. Give, fund God's kingdom. Save, fund your kingdom. Now you live off the rest. We have done that for years and years and years. We even taught our kids that. In fact, back before the internet, we were teaching them with envelopes. Remember, we used to do envelopes? Okay, you got $10 allowance. Now here's $1 for your tithe. Here's $1 for your savings envelope. Now you have $8 to do whatever you want with. I mean, we've taught it for years and years and years, right? See, that's opposite of what the world, instead of what the world does, because here's what this mindset teaches you. This mindset teaches you first and best. It gives you a first and best mindset. When I give, save, and live off the rest, I'm going to give my best. See, the world or culture it's leftover and last. Whatever's left over and what is last. That's how most Americans give. After I fund my kingdom, whatever's left over, then I can be generous. We don't want to be like most Americans, okay? We want to be like stewards. It's not left over and last, it's first and best. Number 3, and this one is really going to flip this. This one has the most potential to flip the script. And here's the great thing: is I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm talking about a thought process. I'm just asking you to think in terms of a manager. Think in terms of a steward. I am not an owner. Everything I have belongs to Him. When you flip this script, here's the third thing that's going to happen. You will find it easier to surrender your entire life to Jesus, your King or God. When you flip the script this way and you make this priority, it becomes easier to give. See, most of the time we give our life to God, but our finances are very difficult. And here's why this is difficult. Most of the time we equate personal wealth with self-worth. Okay? We equate with what we own, where we live, what we drive, how much money we have. How we equate that with our identity. We equate that with our worth. So when it comes, and this is the challenge, when it comes to saying, you know what, I'm going to give first and best, what it feels like is I'm losing control of my money. And when it feels like I'm losing control of my money, then it feels like I'm losing control of my life. That I don't have any control anymore. Why? Because we equate our life with what we possess, what we own. And when we decide that we're not going to have our hand on that, it feels like we're losing control. Which is why Jesus sees us coming, and He asks us this question that John Henry do a great job last week? He asked us this question that John Henry asked us last week, and that is this. And here's the thing, we know the answer to this question. We all know it. We'll say, of course. He says, is not life more than, and he says, what you eat, or where you live, or what you're going to wear? But for us, we might translate it like, is not life more than what you drive or where you vacation or how much money you've saved? Is not life more than where you're going to retire or how you're going to send your kids to college? But before we can answer that, which we all know there, we go, oh, of course it's not. Of course it's more than that. Then Jesus would put this in. He says, by worrying about all that, by worrying about where you're going to send your kids to college and how you're going to, all those, does it even add hours to your life? This is brilliant. Jesus is saying, look, by worrying about how you're going to send your kids to college and how you're going to pay the bills and how you're going to retire, does it even add a day to your life? And I know He's not just talking about days and hours, because it can be said that actually it takes away from your days and hours. Stress over money will reduce your lifespan. But I think he's even addressing, does it even add to the quality of your life? To which we'd all go, no. And Jesus says, obviously not. So why do you live this way? Quit living this way. One more thing, then I'm done. I'm allowed 3 of these closures, all right? And that's this. Whatever we equate with life, we will cling to as if our life depends on it. Whatever you believe is life, you know, I see these hashtags that you go, fly fishing is life. I'm like, I never want to do that because I don't want it to be, I love fly fishing, but it's not my life. Because whatever we equate to life, we will cling to it like our life depends on it. That's why we cling to our stuff. And this idea of pre-deciding that I'm going to give first, that makes me feel like I'm out of control. And that's why we worry. And that's why I say, if you will live this way, it actually becomes easier, because if you can surrender this part of your life to God, you can surrender the rest. But it starts by beginning and acknowledging and thinking like a manager, not an owner. When you're an owner like King David, you say, I am not confused, God. I know where this extra comes from. I know where this opportunity comes from. I know because it all comes from you. And it actually makes it easier for you to surrender to the real king when you can depose or dethrone the imposter king that sits on your heart. See, Jesus knew that asset accumulation would be the number one competition for whether God rules and reigns in our life. And I'm telling you, the people that I've met who've dealt with this, I mean, you show me someone, a man or woman who's dealt with this, and I will show you someone who will never go back to living the other way where they think everything is theirs. And you show me someone who's lived this way, and I'll show you someone who has more peace and probably more prosperity because they have redefined what prosperity looks like for them. So this week, here's your assignment. You ready? Get your phone out. If not, we've got our app, and you can go to notes. This is what you don't have to do anything. It's a thought. This is your assignment. Practice thinking like a manager. This is going to be really fun because you don't have to do anything. But that means when after church, when you're out and you go to lunch with somebody and they're like, the idea comes that you should buy them lunch, and you go, wait a minute, well, this isn't mine, this is God's, so how am I? Everything. Just start to begin to think. What would it be? What would a manager do? What would a good steward do? It's going to be really fun. And because what if you really embrace this idea that we looked at the very beginning? Everything in heaven and earth is yours. What if you actually believe that? What would change, not just you believed it here, but what would actually change here if you actually believed it? I want you to think about that while you close your eyes. Go ahead. We're going to pray. Father, I just want to say a big thank you. Because even writing this message all week long helps me recognize how blessed I am. I'm so blessed. I can't believe I get to do what I do, where I get to do it at. And I recognize that it's you. You're the one who raises someone up. You raise up who you raise up. We have the extra. We have the resources. Because we even live in a country where we have extra. Even where the least have extra. So God, I'm so grateful. And I want to be a good steward. I want to be a good manager. We as a church want to be good managers and stewards responsible for what you've blessed us with. So we do say, God, who are we? That you see this, that you've blessed us. And God, we want to continue to make that impact. We believe that the vision that you have for us as a church is beyond our comprehension. And all it takes is a bunch of people who are willing to say yes. God, we say yes. We love you and honor you in Jesus' name. Amen. So, and just a reminder, as Pastor Matt comes up, we have some people over here in our prayer corner. I don't see them yet, but they will be there. Here she comes. They would love to pray with you. If you have anything that you want to pray for or pray about or with, they would love to pray with you. And I'll tell you, I know all those people, and I would not hesitate to have any one of them pray for me. Pastor Matt, you want to close this out?
Absolutely. What a great message. Thank you, Pastor Eric.
You're welcome.
Guys, if that doesn't inspire you, if that doesn't stir up the passion inside of you, I don't know what will. Don't forget, next week, May 11th, is going to be our Initiatives Sunday. That's the Sunday that we do ask that you give. We ask you this week if you would pray about it. Church for Crab Island, Grub Club, the J1 initiative that we've got this year. As Jessica talked about last week, Westonwood Ranch, and we've got one more that we're going to tell you about coming up next week. So please be in prayer about that. What your giving can provide, the giving that you give can provide local impact, share in the mission of Shoreline Church, and provide lasting good in our community and around the world. If this message, like I said, if it's aroused a passion of you, if it's gotten you excited and ready to go and do something about it, there are some NFC plates on the back of your seats and on the tables in front of you. You can tap those. You can find out more information. You can see where you can get involved. Or if you'd rather, myself, my wife, and some other people are going to be out by the pontoon boat outside. We can talk to you about what's going on, how you can get involved, what part you can play. And if you have any questions or about anything that's going on, we have Discovering Shoreline Church tonight. If you've not been to a Discovering Shoreline before, I really encourage you to go. This is where you can find out about where we came from, what started all this, and where we're planning to go in the future. And even if we don't know what that future looks like, we can talk more about how we're marching into that. I do ask that you would RSVP for that because we like to provide food for you and we want to know who we need to provide for. We love you guys. We'll see you next week for Mother's Day. Y'all have a wonderful Sunday. See you later.
Bye.